Turks. All right, first couple more depressing stories about the budget. Woohoo! And then we move on to fun stuff. Here's the line I was talking about in the president's speech that made me go, whoa, was the big red flag towards the end of the speech. He said he wants to, quote, build on the Fiscal Commission's model of reducing tax expenditures so that there's enough savings to both lower rates and lower the deficit. After all this stuff about having to raise taxes, at the end he says we're going to lower the rates. Okay, number two, this is definitely going to split the Democratic Party because already a lot of Democrats are taking pot shots at progressives, not President Obama. Emmanuel Cleaver from Missouri says he drew a line in the sand today. He chairs the Congressional Black Caucus, and he was very happy about the speech. Hank Johnson from Georgia, who's also in the Congressional Progressive Caucus, says he was pleasantly reassured by Obama's fiscal plan. They're buying it hook, line, and sinker. Jerry Connolly, Democrat of Virginia, says, and this is the interesting one, quote, some on the left don't want to take any responsibility for the political dynamic we have to live with for the next 2 years. Meaning, the next 2 years, we have to bow our heads to the Republicans. That's the political dynamic, and you people on the left are not taking responsibility for that. Notice when the Republicans are in the minority, they never talk about the political dynamic that they have to live with. They talk about fighting every step of the way. They filibuster every single bill. They don't give a damn what they said about the filibuster before and how they wanted to get rid of it. They just do it, okay? And they don't talk about, oh, but you don't understand our political dynamic. The Republicans are so strong and we're so weak. So a lot of the Democrats will come out and defend President Obama no matter how much he gives away the store. And every minute that I think about the implications of the details of that speech and the notes that the White House put out afterwards, I think, we're going to be in for a disaster. But, you know, look, why does the White House play that politics, right? Policy-wise, you might say, well, it's totally counter to his speech. Yes, but politics, look, they did that deal the other day, right? Budget negotiations that was $38.5 billion in spending cuts they gave the Republicans. Told you a million times the Republicans initially only wanted $32 billion. They got $38.5. But by the way, in a recent report I just saw, they said $39.9 billion. Where did that come from? Would you be surprised if they added basically another $1.5 billion to it? I wouldn't be surprised, right? So I don't know. I just saw it in one report. But when you ask the American people, are you happy with that compromise, is how it's framed, of course. Americans are reasonable people. They generally like compromise. They don't really know what's in the deal. They go, okay, 62% say they like it. Only 25% say they dislike it. So Obama looks at that and goes, see, nobody's paying attention. And by the way, the details of what got cut just got released basically yesterday, or the day before, I should say. Many, many days after the compromise was announced. And why didn't we hear any of the details? The details are ugly, so the Republicans don't want you to hear what they're cutting, and the Democrats don't want you to hear what they're conceding to. So both sides have a tacit agreement. Shh. Okay. So, and this poll was taken before anybody knows any of the details, so they go, I don't know, the president seems like he's in favor of it, the Republicans look like they're in favor of it, okay, great. So that's the political game that's being played. By the way, in that same USA Today Gallup poll, should we cut Medicare by an overwhelming 2-to-1 margin? No, we should not cut Medicare. I guess people will find out the details after the president and the Republicans agree to this particular deal, and it turns out, lo and behold, your Medicare got cut. You're going to be like, well, how did that happen? I thought we had a great negotiated compromise. Yeah, they negotiated over your ass. They compromised your ass. And that's what I'm afraid of. Now, the flip side is that the way that the Republicans move the political spectrum so far to the right is by putting together more and more radical proposals. And Paul Ryan's proposal is draconian, radical, ridiculous, you name it, right? Now, here's the downside for them. They got to sign off on that. So the Republican candidates are all like, oh, it is a very serious and excellent start to the conversation. So you're on board? Well, let me get back to you. Because they don't want to sign on to, yes, I would like to hack Medicare and turn it into a private voucher system, which the American people despise. Now, they don't want to sign on to that. At the same time, they can't say, oh, our main plan in Congress that does all that spending cuts sucks. So they're stuck on it. Well, okay, good. That's a good position. And now the House Republicans actually have to take a vote on it. And all of a sudden, they're a little hesitant to take that vote because a lot of them represent districts that are heavily senior citizens. And all of a sudden, they got to go to those senior citizens and go, yeah, about that Medicare. I signed a bill that would dramatically cut it and by all accounts of independent analysts would basically destroy Medicare. Yeah, that doesn't play too well. So, hey, look, they're stuck. Either they're going to vote down their own proposal, which would be fantastic, or they're going to, worse yet for them, they're going to sign on to it. Now, if they had a real political party against them, that party would destroy them with ads. Then they would say, these are the guys who wanted to destroy your Medicare. And they'd run those ads over and over until they got the House back. Are they dealing with an actual opposition on the other side? Well, sometimes yes, and sometimes the Washington Generals come in and they go, oh my God, what did the Harlem Globetrotters do? How did they lose to Rick Scott? That's what I always go back to give you a sense of the overall incompetence of the Democratic Party. Rick Scott in Florida is a crook. I mean, he made his fortune by his company defrauding Medicare. They had to pay a fine of over $1 billion. It was the largest fine on record at that time. It had 14 felonies, this company. That's how he got rich. You can't beat that guy? I mean, that's why part of the reason I call him the Washington Generals. How do you lose to that guy? This is the ads you run every single day. Rick Scott is a goddamn criminal. And he robbed the American people before, and now he wants to be governor so he can rob you. Oh, boo-hoo, that's unfair. It's not unfair. 14 felonies. Oh, technically, Rick Scott wasn't the one charged. The company he was the CEO of, which, oh, yeah. By the time you're all done, said and done with that, people get it. Rick Scott robbed you for a living. They lost to that guy. By the way, as soon as Rick Scott got in office, started implementing his policies, his popularity went down 15 to 20%. How did you lose to that guy? All right. So, by the way, Republicans are saying, this debt ceiling, we will not lift it. President Obama better give us exactly what we want, okay? And the reality is it's bullshit. They're going to raise that debt ceiling. You know why? Wall Street has told the Republicans, do not mess with this. It will screw over American corporations, which is the most important thing for Republicans, but especially the banks. Jamie Dimon has put out a note saying, under no circumstances should we not raise the debt ceiling. End of this. The Republicans will raise the debt ceiling. Don't believe any of the hype about, we want more spending because we want this, we want that, we'll do that. Bullshit. They're owned by the banks and by corporations. They got their marching orders. You got them over a barrel. Hence, since the president has them over a barrel, I'm sure he will give them enormous concessions. Now, speaking of concessions, this gives you a perfect sense of how screwed up our system is. There's these things called free choice vouchers that would pass as part of the healthcare proposal. They were mainly pushed by Senator Wyden from Oregon, right? And it turns out special interests don't like them. The business community hates them. What it is it allows an employee to opt out of the employer-based system and go into a market where it's more competitive so they can get better rates. Now, it turns out the labor unions don't like this either. The AFL-CIO is also against it. So, in the middle of budget negotiations that had nothing to do with the healthcare bill, they killed this system. Now, wait a minute. These vouchers actually, according to independent analysts, do not add to the deficit. They take away from the deficit. They save us money. So, in the middle of your so-called deficit cutting, why did you kill a program that helps lower the deficit? It's because they don't work for us, man. They work for the lobbyists. So the Democrats and the Republicans got together like, hey, you want to throw that proposal under a bus? And neither one of our special interests likes it. Great. Boom. There it goes under a bus. They don't work for us. They work for the lobbyists who pay them. Clean elections. It's the only choice we have. Otherwise, everything is a joke. You're going to get Democrats who lose on purpose. You're going to get Democrats who talk like Democrats but act like Republicans. You're going to get Republicans who, both talk and act like Attila the Hun. all in the name of more profits for corporations and for the very, very rich. That's the system. Why? Because they bought it. Look, if you bought some, let's say, look, forget an item. Let's say you're paying a guy to do a job, right? Make it up. He's your plumber. You want him to fix your sink. If instead of fixing your sink, he goes and helps your neighbor walk across the street, you say, wait a minute, now I didn't pay you for that. Get back to fixing the sink. I'm paying you X number of dollars per hour, right? I mean, the thing you're doing, helping a little old lady cross the street, that seems lovely. You do it on your own time. No, I am paying you to fix the sink, right? Well, the rich and the corporate donors are paying the politicians to give them tax cuts. They're not paying them to help you. Oh, you're helping the little old lady with the Medicare and the Social Security. Who gives a fuck? No. That's not what I paid you for. I paid you to be my bitch. Be my bitch. Lower those corporate taxes. Lower the top brackets. That's what the Republicans are pushing for at all costs. And Democrats seemingly agree. Look, I'm going to leave the budget topic. Just one thing here. The devil is in the details. And if the president, you know me, if the president comes out and says, all right, we are getting rid of the tax loopholes. We are getting rid of the Bush tax cuts, okay? And he said he absolutely positively would. He said he refuses to renew the Bush tax cuts. That's good. That's why I got encouraged, right? And he does not lower corporate taxes or does not lower the highest income bracket. Well, that's a big win. And I am ready to give him the world's biggest credit, right? But if he goes and somehow lowers taxes again for corporations and the top bracket, okay. Well, he got hired to fix a sink, didn't he? Anyway, his top donor, remember, in 2008? Goldman Sachs. Oh, speaking of which, let me tell you about a fun Senate report. Senate report came out saying, yeah, you know what? It turns out Goldman Sachs totally was part of the reason that we had that giant recession and the collapse of the financial system. Why? Because what they would do is they would set up toxic mortgages, and then as they're selling that to their clients, secretly behind their back, they would call it crap, pigs, etc., and short it, meaning they would bet against it. So on the one hand, they go to their clients, oh, look at these wonderful mortgages. They're so beautiful, aren't they? Go ahead and buy. And then they take fees from that. On the other hand, they go around to somebody else and go, I'll bet you that those things go under. And so you find some sucker, they make the bet, AIG, which we then paid off, for example. And so they make money from selling it, and they make money from betting against it because they're set to blow. You know who set them to blow? Goldman Sachs, among others, right? So that's the scam. And so great Senate report led by not just Carl Levin, who's a Democrat from Michigan, but Tom Coburn, who is a Republican from Oklahoma. And Coburn had some very good and strong comments about it. I was encouraged by it. And said this is, ridiculous and needs to be reformed. Now, by the way, was it reformed under Dodd-Frank? The report explains no, not reformed. Here's the second problem that the reform pointed out. The rating agencies. Disaster, okay? When they would artificially increase the ratings of these toxic mortgages. Why? They were paid by the guys who built the toxic mortgages. Come on, if you're paid to fix a sink, you fix a sink, right? If you're paid to say toxic mortgages are great sound investments, you will say they are great sound investments. So that's exactly what happened. And now, many, many, many years later, the Senate comes out and goes, golly gee willikers, did you know that? Yeah, if you were listening to the Young Turks for the last 3 years, you definitely knew that, right? But look, better late than never, I guess. And now they're pushing for better reform because they said Dodd-Frank didn't touch that at all. That was the major financial reform bill. I know! That's why I didn't like the bill. Now, if they wind up actually adding more reform and fixing that system, hallelujah. Again, world's biggest credit bouquet I will deliver to them. I'm really glad they did the report. Don't get me wrong. It's a positive step. But we haven't fixed the damn thing. You know, Bernanke admitted 6 months ago, I missed this. A friend of mine just tipped me off to this yesterday. Said 6 months ago, I know we're inflating the stock market, but, you know, we have to just to keep the prices up. Great. We're rebuilding the bubble. That's like the 8th report in a row I've seen that we're rebuilding the bubble. That's a great idea. Okay. Now, as we have deal with Democrats that are often frustrated, on the other side, the reason we don't have a choice and the reason that this two-party system is failing is because on the other side we have Republicans who are lunatics, right? But it's not just their leaders. Honestly, it's the actual voters themselves. Do you know, a new poll out, and it's on the anniversary of the Civil War's 150th anniversary, that was a couple of days ago. Republicans, 52% of Republicans say that slavery was not the main reason for the Civil War. Well, so what was the main reason? I mean, what they just? I mean, look, in your classes, in history class, in civics class, etc. The teachers give you a lot of different reasons. They say, oh, you know what? There was economic reasons, and it was an agriculture-based economy in the South, and it was a manufacturing-based in the North, and blah 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 blah. Right? Yeah. All that stuff is true. It was slavery. Okay. They say, when you ask the Republicans, they say, oh, it was states' rights mainly. Yeah, it was the right of states to own slaves. That was the issue at hand. By the way, in his inaugural speech, so you're not confused, Abraham Lincoln said, the main substantial reason why we have this disagreement is because of slavery. They want to rewrite but you know what? It's actually some startling numbers, not just about Republicans, but also even among independents and Democrats. In a separate part of the poll, when they ask, who do you sympathize with more, the Union or the Confederacy? First of all, I'm stunned by the question. Confederates were the ones that held the slaves, that ripped the country apart, caused the Civil War. We're still having this conversation? Who's for the Confederacy? Well, here's your answers. 28% of Republicans say they prefer the Confederacy. What the fuck? What? Okay. I don't know. I guess I'm missing this culture that, like, Yahoo! Would have been great if America was broken up in two different countries, and our country down in the South got to keep slaves. Ha ha! Woohoo! That would have been great. Fuck you. I don't know. I mean, look, come on, man. But more depressing, 24% of independents prefer the Confederacy. Are you ready for this? 20% of Democrats prefer the Confederacy. I don't know, man. What does that say about our country? This is one of the most depressing polls I've ever seen. All right, JR, what am I missing here? What the fuck?
Everybody talks about how far we've gone. And we have, but I don't know how minds don't always change that quickly. And then so people go along because that's the way it is. But it doesn't mean they're very happy about it. So when it just gets to their feelings, which is why, and I hate to go on this other tangent, which is why I still have this belief to a larger extent than you do in affirmative action, because we don't know what people are thinking. We know what they have to do, but until you make them do it, they'll be like, how can I get around this? Because I really still don't really believe that things are really equal or should be equal. Well, I mean, people's minds we can't get into, but this is the way they think.
No, I'm blown away by it, man. By the way, it's not some rinky-dink poll. It's CNN doing this poll, okay? Let's go back to the slavery was the main reason or not the main reason for the Civil War question. Independents, 50% slavery was the main reason. 47% slavery was not the main reason. Democrats, slavery was the main reason, 65%, but not the main reason was 30%. On what planet, man? I mean, look, you want to talk about nuances of the Civil War, that's a perfectly smart and rational conversation. But the main, of course it was slavery. What were they arguing over? Fucking butterflies and you have the wrong kind of flowers? I don't like what you're wearing? No, it was slavery. Come on, man. I don't know what to do with this country, man. Seriously, this is one of the most depressing polls I've ever seen. Okay. Well, I don't know what to tell you. All right, here's what I got to tell you. I still have so much stuff, but we got to take a break. Okay. When we come back, Alan West is a tough guy, which I really like, and then some fun Republican clips.
Welcome back to the Young Turks. Anna and Cenk with you. During the break, I got a tweet from a gentleman by the name of Nick. He sent me a very interesting tweet, and I think he actually sent it to me before we did that last story on how Belgians work the least. Well, he sent me a tweet during the U.S. loan story. He says, U.S. loans are so effed up. In Belgium, you pay $700 per year in tuition, and you graduate without debt. What are we doing? Why are we not in Belgium?
Come on. TYT Belgium. Let's get out of here, man. Socialism, it's terrible. They get almost a free education. They retire by the age of 60. They only work 7 hours a day. Yeah, I wouldn't want any of that. Look, look, it depends on your definition of socialist, right? Which is one of the vaguest words that is possible. Loosely speaking, I'm not a socialist, right? Although I think there should be some melding of what the government does and what private market does, which then I guess makes all of us socialists. That's certainly the United States as well. But anyway, getting beyond that, I'm not sure I'm totally on board for their system. But when you hear stories like that, you're like, damn, man, maybe I should put a couple more thoughts behind it. It does sound pretty good.
It's so incredible. $700 for an entire year's worth of tuition. You know how much we pay for books each semester or each quarter? $700. Unbelievable. That's so depressing. All right, let's get to Kobe Bryant. So Kobe Bryant was recently fined $100,000 for using a gay slur after a referee called a technical foul on him. Apparently, referee Benny Adams called the technical foul. Kobe got heated, and he called the ref the F word, faggot. And, the ref was upset about it. The gay community was outraged by it. They felt that, it's an inexcusable thing. He should be apologetic about it. Kobe was actually very unapologetic about it. He released a statement through the Lakers, and I want to read it to you. He said, "What I said last night should not be taken literally. My actions were out of frustration during the heat of the game, period. The words expressed do not reflect my feelings toward the gay and lesbian communities and were not meant to offend people." So basically, look, when I read that, I interpret it as, look, you guys are taking it way too seriously, just get over it. That's not the way to handle this situation, in my opinion. Maybe he doesn't have the best publicist in the world, but you should definitely be apologetic after calling someone a faggot.
Yeah, he I don't know. I was considering this. Figured this would happen. I said, oh yeah, soon the apology will be out. It'll be Kobe saying a very basic statement. Actually, probably not Kobe even wrote it, I was assuming. So when I got back home and I was looking to see what he said, I was like, oh, he totally wrote this. Fucking idiot.
He did write
Does he
it.
talk? Oh, it's amazing that that after going through all this, I was thinking, I've as you guys know, I hate the Lakers. And I didn't want that to be any of the fuel towards, because I knew it was going to go along the lines of, oh, well, these are just athletes. That's the way they talk. They don't really mean it that way. All that is reason why they shouldn't do it. If you don't even know what you're saying, you probably shouldn't say it. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, that's what if we said something that we didn't know what it meant, it was probably a pretty bad thing. My parents would be like, do you know what that means? Mm-hmm. Do you know what that means? And you definitely put on the spot to have to explain what that means. And if we did know what it meant, why do you know what that means and where'd you get that from? Mm-hmm. So you need to get a cycle, a thought process as to why you're doing what you're doing, why you're saying what you're saying, and how it makes you look. And who you are because of it. So people will say, oh, that's just what athletes do. Remember Isaiah Washington from Grey's Anatomy?
Yep.
Got fired for calling T.R. Knight. Same word, right? Mm-hmm. Off camera, off air, wasn't recorded, but people saw it and heard it. Why is this different? This is worse.
I feel like people make a lot of excuses for Kobe. And this goes back to his, alleged rape case where, he wasn't found guilty of rape. But, people always come to his defense because they're such huge fans. And with this specific case, I think the whole, oh, he's just a passionate athlete argument comes in, and people are much more willing to dismiss it. But when it came to Isaiah Washington, it was like, well, he's an actor, there's no excuse for it. No, I don't think there's an excuse for it in either case. And look, one can make that argument that he's an athlete and he just got really frustrated and it was a heat of the moment type thing. But then later on, the next day when he's calm, he issues a smug statement. That really makes you look bad. That means that you don't think you did anything wrong.
And the reason he'll continue to think that is because of the people who apologize for him because he can shoot. Oh, he had a jump shot. Kobe's okay. It doesn't matter. It's okay, man. Let's do this. Did you ever? And then whenever people start going other people, haven't you seen Kevin Garnett say it? Yeah, I have seen him say it. This should be the beginning of the end of it. This should be the part of it. So that now I didn't think a fine would do much, actually, because I figured a fine would come down. I was like, I don't think that's going to do anything. It's a pretty big fine, but really, it's going to cause this defense mechanism to kick in now. Mm-hmm. There needs to be, as I was saying, the thought process needs to start as to why they're doing what they're doing, and not just a blatant, straight, across-the-board punishment, so that people will start going, well, we say it all the time, but he got caught on camera saying it.
Right.
As long as the camera doesn't catch me, or if I'm on a shitty team that never gets national games, say it all I want. And there needs to be a change in the culture of it. You can say all kinds of things. Call a ref anything you want. And then nobody said he can't cuss. We know all of them cuss. Mm-hmm. So if you're like, oh, you guys focusing on the fucking part or the F word part, and it's annoying. It's any kind of way people can deflect to get off of the real point of this guy did it. He needs to take responsibility for it. Know why it's bad. Maybe he doesn't. Mm-hmm. And then move on. Nobody's trying to get money out of your. Well, the NBA is obviously.
Right.
But I don't care about how much they fine him. Is he going to change the way he thinks? In whatever way he thinks, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, the thing that really did rub me the wrong way was definitely his lack of sincerity, I guess. The fact that he wasn't, understanding, his lack of understanding. I mean, and I don't want to be the word police, okay? Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be up in everyone's business and say, you can't say that word. But you have to at least understand why this word is offensive and why people are hurt by it, right? Instead of having that, he has a very flippant attitude, like, I didn't mean to offend. Just get over it, period. Okay, I just said it because it was in the heat of the moment. Be a little more understanding, okay? And I think that maybe there's a possibility, this is speculation, that Kobe has become such a big star in the realm of the NBA that he feels a little invincible. Like, yeah, I said that, and I said it in the heat of the moment. I'm an athlete. I don't know if you guys know that. I'm an athlete, not a big deal. So yeah, I said that word and get over it. So if he was a little more apologetic, I think people would be more open to letting it go. But right now, people are really upset at him. And, there are different spokespeople from different gay and lesbian organizations that are like, look, we want a real apology. Can we please get that? And I don't think that that's an unreasonable request. So,
guys, can you hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, I'm back. First of all, on Kobe. It's amazing, this NBA context, right? Like, to us, it makes sense to get fined $100,000, etc. But think about that. Imagine if at any other job, if you said the wrong word, you would get fined $100,000. Wouldn't that be amazing, right? But, like, the NBA players make so much, they're like, yeah, okay, I guess I said a bad word. Here's $100,000. I don't know. It's a random little point I wanted to make, but I'm blown away by that. $100,000.
No, that's an incredible amount of money, but it's just a drop in the bucket for him. He doesn't care. $100,000 is like us paying a $50 parking fine. It's a pain in the ass. We don't want to do it, but it's not going to break the bank. And, that's the same case for Kobe here. So.
And one last thing, I wonder why Kobe thinks he can get away with things. I mean, there was that rape charge that he got away with. So, can he get away with saying the wrong word? Of course.
Yeah, that's what we were actually talking about right now, Cenk, when you got disconnected. JR and I were talking about how there are so many people that are willing to, let him slide, and so many people, it's almost like the Obama apologists. Like, Obama can do no wrong in their eyes, and Kobe has the same type of fans where he can do whatever he wants and it doesn't matter. He can do no wrong. He's always going to have the supporters and the people who back him up. So I think he has this sense of, I'm invincible. I said this terrible word, but who cares? It's not a big deal. I'm an athlete. That's the sense that I get from his apology, by the way. It's not something that I just came up with on my own.
I hear you.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that does it for today's hour. Stick around for the post-game show. JR is going to talk about his experience with George Lopez. And if you're watching MSNBC today, make sure you catch Cenk at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys tomorrow.